Current Leadership Institute scholars for your mentorship and continuance to uphold the high ideals of this Leadership Institute. Dr. Taylor and Ms. Thomas for inviting me to deliver this address here today, and soon to be our newly inducted Leadership Institute Fellows, for committing to embark on this transformative journey as a student of leadership. The journey to transformative leadership is a long one, but well worth the destination. Now, I'll preface this address with this. For those of you who know me, you know I can be quite long-winded, but for the sake of not wanting to be accountable for standing between you all and that food back there, I'll cut 20 seconds off. When Dr. Taylor requested that I give the address for this year's induction ceremony, I immediately began thinking back to my very own induction ceremony. I was a bright-eyed college freshman who simply wanted to go to the pinning ceremony by an instant so that I could eat dinner and possibly not have a 7 a.m. class on Friday. It was the first pin among others that I wore proudly as a freshman, and the first time I felt true camaraderie here at Hampton University. Little did I know how transformative my experience in the Leadership Institute would be, and how each lesson imparted would positively set me apart from others beyond these walls. So I began thinking of a multitude of topics to speak about: leadership, navigating today's global society, the importance of global perspective, principles of success. Admittedly, I said to myself, just talk about your experiences and you'll be fine. But after much concentrated thought and internal back and forth, I finally figured out what I wanted to speak on, which is developing the next level mindset. The world and society as we know it today grows more and more interconnected and interdependent, signaling rapid change and the need to adapt to ever-changing circumstances. With the advent of new technologies that allow for increased rates of information sharing, knowledge exchange, and process efficiencies, we are witnessing a time unlike any other. The heights and extent of human potential are being tested in all fields of endeavor, and the level of competition continues to grow each and every day. How, then, are leaders distinguished in such a crowded, hyper-competitive field? The answer lies in developing and zeroing in on superior leadership qualities and the cultural dexterity to navigate multifaceted situations and circumstances. All of us attain of education, whether it's from the Ivy Tower, the School of Hard Knocks, or a combination of both. And we elevate ourselves in accordance to all we have been given, or so we hope. The technical and tactical prowess one possesses places that individual in the majority, but each individual must surpass the threshold of the majority and transcend into his or her own level of greatness in their own fields of endeavor. If life can be likened to a game with us being the players, the reality is that most players will seek to maximize their levels comfortably until leveling up from their current level becomes uncomfortable. There's a quote that states, "Doors have an immediate familiarity. They're everywhere. They're scaled to our bodies, so there's something human about them." As leaders, we must become intentionally well acquainted with walking through doors with perceivably unfamiliar dimensions. Walking through doors that are familiar in of itself is not inherently bad, but coupled with the element of repetition, we resign ourselves to a fate of routine in our lives, never quite fully realizing our truest potential. Becoming intimately acquainted with walking through doors that are unfamiliar allows us to be yielded internal clarity about the transformative nature of each of the unfamiliar doors and our personal identities and purpose. Amidst the sea of familiarity, we must seek to chart our own course in unfamiliar waters to discover our own treasure. One of the most formative unfamiliar doors I stepped through was that of Hampton University. I attended a private school in Baltimore, Maryland. Don't ask me how to say two or what it means to live in Kansas City and be a diehard Ravens fan, for those who watch football. And I struggled living in a visibly homogeneous environment. I felt foreign to a certain extent, growing up with neighbors and classmates sharing the same socioeconomic, racial, ethnic statuses, and relegating themselves to their respective circles. I attended Hampton in hopes of piecing parts of my identity together that had been ambiguously defined growing up. What I did was that plus much more here at Hampton University. What helped in this unfamiliar setting was my natural gift of connecting with multifaceted individuals and my ability to reaffirm the dignity and worth of the differences present in everyone that yearns to be expressed. During my senior year at Hampton, I once again entered another unfamiliar door, applying to the Fulbright Scholarship. At the time, I had never heard of the Fulbright Scholarship, but when Dr. Carlton Long, who some of you have had the pleasure of working with, and Dr. Sabin Duncan presented me with the details of what it entailed, I knew that this was the opportunity to apply theory to practice. I had always been committed to promoting and celebrating mutual understanding in diverse spaces, and so I enthusiastically took the jump. Initially, I was overwhelmed, as many successful applicants' backgrounds were in the international space or political science, and other campuses had entire buildings dedicated to creating and tweaking personal statements and had tombs of examples to inspire potential applicants. At the outset, I struggled to draw inspiration from the large amounts, but a trip to the Hampton University archives completely changed that aspect of things. As I went through the archives to find other Hampton Fulbrighters, I discovered that we only had 4 in the entire history of Hampton. I drew newfound inspiration from the fact that I was simply not applying for myself, but rather the Hampton community, the broader HBCU community, and for other young black men and women who needed to see that we have a narrative and space to occupy in the international space. Reading the program for tonight's ceremony, you may have gotten the impression that there were no obstacles in the way of winning this, and this opportunity to serve as a Fulbright Scholar and Culture Ambassador to Malaysia. But, much like an iceberg, you only see a tip of a massive structure that extends hundreds of feet into the ocean. So initially I was designated an alternate for the country of Thailand. When I didn't win, I felt as though I let down a community. And after a while, applying again to the back of my mind was placed to the back of my mind. I had not put my best foot forward, seemingly, and it did not work out. But it's something about that God that I serve that allows divine coincidences to occur, and when God opens that door that no man can close, rest assured that it is for the good of all involved. A few months later, after being designated an alternate, I received an email from the Institute of International Education that they would like to update me about my candidacy. I figured, well, they're not going to call me and give me an update and say that I got rejected. So when I took the call, they asked me if I wanted to go to Malaysia for the Fulbright ETA grant. If you haven't already, there will be times in your life where you must jump or forsake the opportunity. The late Napoleon Hill, who authored one of the greatest self-help books of all time, Think and Grow Rich, later noted that Andrew Carnegie, the great steel magnate, gave him all but a minute to decide if he would commit his adulthood to learning the successful habits of the great men of his day. So as you can imagine, I jumped and have not regretted a single second of it. Now, the time I have allotted to talk to you is too short to encapsulate nearly a year being abroad in Malaysia. So I'll spare the details and simply say it was the most transformative and enlightening experience that I've had to date. On a mental, spiritual, and physical level, it is one of the most enlightening experiences that I can think of at this moment of having. When opportunity knocks, we must be prepared to answer, and leaders never miss the opportunity to show that they are prepared. Again, if life is a game, the written rules are published, but a set of unwritten rules is bespoke. In the profiles of leadership I often study, and reflecting on my own personal successes and failures, there are 2 components to great leadership that I have clearly observed. Clear intention to use one's God-given gifts and a distinct set of specific leadership qualities common to all high achievers. Your time in developing Your greatness as leaders at Hampton has just begun, and as a collective, you have already begun to inculcate two of these leadership qualities through attending classes in the early AM: consistency and commitment. High-performance leaders maintain consistency across the board and are committed to inspiring a shared vision among all who they touch. Ask any person in prominence in any field of endeavor, and they will tell you you have to have the ability to take a leap of faith and jump. Opportunity does not wait for those who do not show up to take it. There have been situations in my personal and professional life where taking too long to decide if the opportunity was right, I lost out on the potential for an opportunity altogether. Almost every successful person has jumped. When you jump, it's like a parachute. The parachute might not open up right away. You might get some cuts and bruises on the way down, but at the right time, your parachute will open and reassure you of the decision to jump in the first place. Over the course of your time in the Leadership Institute, you all will be tested in ways unimaginable and undoubtedly challenged both inside and outside of the classroom, unlike ever before. But a strong belief in the foundation you've already established, coupled with the will to persevere and stay the course with a moral compass, will help navigate this thing called life. As you think about how to best contribute your gifts to the betterment of this world, allow yourself to never forget the legacy of those who have come before you and traversed these paths, embodying the ethos of service, commitment, and character. When it comes to service, I'm continually reminded of the rich cultural diversity in this country to serve one another. We have the luxury to engage with individuals who think, look, act differently than ourselves, each comprising of a smaller piece of the tapestry of the human experience. Recognizing how various forms of service facilitate mutual understanding among all those involved is what binds us together at our core. Let us also not forget that some of the highest forms of genuine service and selflessness often go largely unnoticed and taken for granted. In any space, there will be different individuals who perform different functions to maintain the livelihood and well-being of those institutions, and who occupy and share that space. So we owe it to each other to value and celebrate the varying degrees of workmanship present and reorient ourselves to do so if the elements are not present. Commitments are varied and many, but as leaders in this global society, we must remain committed to the mutual uplift and goodwill of our brothers and sisters wherever they may be around the world, and carry that commitment with the enthusiastic willingness to engage other individuals with whom we share great differences, to allow us to grasp the totality of the human experience. We owe it to each other to create a space of understanding and mutual edification of one another for the collective good. And lastly, character is perhaps the most important. I would be remiss if I did not emphasize the importance of character to you all tonight. We need not look far to see daily examples of individuals and institutions that have stained the moral fabric of what we hold dear as humans, universally close to our hearts and at our core. There will be times, much like the ones now, where individuals will seek those willing to create change and who have a positive impact on their own terms, as well as use their gifts to uplift all of humanity for the good. The Leadership Institute will prepare you for these challenges and has prepared me for a world seemingly riddled with pitfalls for the unsuspecting. You will receive tough love from your instructors because it pains them to see you not reach your potential and fall far below it. There will be times when you feel that some point is being driven home repetitively, only to later to be able to recall the information and demonstrate command over knowledge superior to those around you. The journey of an exceptional leader can be quite lonely at times. But ask yourself, how do you want to be remembered? This induction, scholars, represents your first step in taking commitment to be a leader who is globally conscious, emotionally adept, tactfully and technically proficient in your chosen fields of endeavor. When I reflect on sitting in these very chairs you occupy now, I never imagined that I would be speaking on this stage and leaning on many of the teachings I learned in the Leadership Institute. Since leaving these walls, I've been afforded opportunities that have been wonderfully transformative and inspiring in the path to discover myself. And in the process, I've had the fortune of sharing some of the very same leadership qualities I learned here and developed with other of my colleagues in my personal and professional life as well. So, go forth boldly and pursue that which sets your hearts ablaze and excellence in all that you do. For the collective hope of sustaining the dignified legacy rests upon you. Thank you.
Thank you.